Hi, friends. I'm Lauren Bernick, and I'm flipping the script about growing older. My guests have been influencers since before that was even a thing. Welcome to the Anti-Aging Podcast. Welcome to Age Like a Badass Mother. Dreena Burton is the OG vegan author with 6 solo printed titles and 2 additional books co-authored with Dr. Neil Barnard. A lifelong student and teacher of movement and health, Dreena teaches fascial self-stretching to give others the tools to regain a youthful body free of pain and stiffness. And I can attest, I do her Fascia Flo workout. So to learn more about her work, you can go to dreenaburton.com and fasciaflow.com. I'll have that in the show notes. So please help me welcome Dreena Burton. Hello, welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Lauren. It's nice to
So
be
gl- I'm so glad to meet you. Um, so, first of all, you have so many fantastic cookbooks that I think you're well known for. But I think one of the favorites is Dreena's Kind Kitchen. Yeah, would you say?
here. Yeah,
What?
the two that probably did the best were Plant Powered Families and Dreena's Kind Kitchen.
Yep.
Mm.
And can you tell us what a kind kitchen is?
Yeah, when I wrote that book, it was right at the pandemic, right before the pandemic, and there was a real sense of coming back to yourself and not only cooking from a place of kindness in the sense that we're choosing plants over animals, obviously, and it has less of an environmental impact. But also, easing off some of the pressures on yourself in terms of cooking and having a little bit of like, I've always felt like I wanted to guide people through my recipes and feel like they're in the kitchen with me in a sense. So, kind of wanting to meet people where they're at and not from a place of judgment or too much like dogma, really just bringing them in where they are.
Oh yeah, that's really nice. I know the pandemic was so hard on people, and I think that one of the things that did come out of it was maybe a little more self-compassion.
Yeah.
Hopefully, people
Yeah.
were getting that. So, do you think that a lot of people who pick up your book are not vegan and they just want to try out some vegan recipes, or do you have a sense of that?
I'd say there are some. I do feel like it's still largely the plant-based community who
Hmm.
gravitate to my books, but I feel like, even in my own community, I hear from people by email often who say, I love your recipes. I'm not fully plant-based, and it's like they have to, preface it to me, and I'm
They
like,
have to tell you.
yeah. So it's certainly some do, but I do feel like, yeah, the majority is still plant-based.
Yeah. How did you come to veganism or plant-based
Mm.
eating?
It was a while ago now. It's over 25 years. And I, so I heard that you grew up sort of in a diet culture in your family, right,
Yes.
with your mom, and I did as well.
I noted that.
It's in the age, right? It's in the era.
Yes.
And so I was food aware from an early age because it was kind of imposed upon me and a couple
Mhm.
of my sisters, right? To be aware of what we were eating, to watch our calories, to, go to Weight Watchers with mom and that kind of
Yes, I
thing.
did too.
Yeah, so much fun. Just what a
Mhm.
20-year-old wants to do. And I actually, it was much earlier for me. I was actually, like, I remember in grade 4 having a lot of focus on my weight then. Then I
Mhm.
look back now and I go, oh my gosh, I was just a baby. And
Mhm.
so it just made me food aware. And then when I moved into my teenage years, I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to get healthier, but mostly to lose weight, right? At that time in my life. So I was exercising and then I was starting to learn about dietary just dietary lifestyles and came across this very random article about red meat and how it doesn't digest well in the intestines. And that just set something off for me. Like you hold on to all of this really indigested and meat, and it's so toxic for your body, etc. So it just kind of sparked something and put me on a path. And then I came across Diet for New America by John Robbins. and also Fit for Life. And I just learned a lot about like dairy and meat and just said, okay, do you know that book too?
Fit for Life, I still have it. I pulled it out recently, was looking through it. That's crazy. That's the food combining one, right?
Yes, 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 and I
Mhm.
don't focus too much on food combining now because I like to combine, sort of higher protein foods with more higher carbohydrate foods. But that being said, it did school me a lot in food and nutrition, and so that was the path. And then in my I got to a point where we cut out like the meats, and then dairy was last. And then when I cut out dairy, like wow, things changed in my body. I felt so much energy, more energy, and I used to have constipation, and that went away, and just all the things, right? Um, and that was really there was no turning back. It's like I was reading a book that said it's a one-way street diet. Once you learn, once you go there, you
Yeah.
don't want to go back because you don't want to feel that way again. And then the cookbook started when my husband's dad had a heart attack, and his cardiologist recommended a plant-based diet and recommended that.
Wow.
I know this was like profound, right? Back, it was
Yeah.
years ago, and it was in Newfoundland, which is on the east coast of Canada and small town. And the chances of him having a cardiologist that would recommend a plant-based diet probably slim to none. Like I should have
Right.
just got the lotto ticket that day, right?
Yes. I know, I've never even heard of that the cardiologist suggested it.
It was unreal. I remember my husband saying, like, he's saying to follow Dean Ornish's program, which was also quite low fat, of course.
Yes.
And I was like, what? And then we were already vegan, and they came to us and said, what do we do? And that just kind of started that process of me sketching out recipes. And I feel like I've evolved so much from my first book, like as we do, right?
Of
We learn
course.
and grow. But it was certainly the start, and it just kept growing with the growth of our family. Actually, I found I learned more about nutrition with having children, and what I wanted to make sure they were getting essential nutrients and variety, and everything just evolved on.
Mhm.
Mm.
And I wanna go back to, Diet for a New America because if people I don't know how I've never read this book, but I know all about it, and I'm very familiar with John Robbins and his story because when I was a teenager, we had a family friend, and my mom's friend and her child died of cancer. She was 27, she was older than me, I was probably, like, 17. And the father of the child who died of cancer, you know, was like, What, I have to do something different so that this doesn't happen to anybody else in my family. We have to change the way we eat." And I don't know if he read Diet for a New America, but I remember he was telling anybody with ears, you have to go. He was like macrobiotic. You have to go vegan or macrobiotic, and you have to read John Robbins' book. He is the heir to Baskin and Robbins, the ice cream. And he turned his back, if people don't know the story, he turned his back on his fortune, his family fortune, because he felt so deeply that dairy was so destructive to your body. Can you imagine that?
I mean, what a testament, right? Like, how much more do you need to know? Than he
Mhm.
moved away from his legacy, basically.
Mhm.
Lead people in
Yeah.
a new way.
Yeah, and I remember, um, when I was a little bit older, so, like I said, family friend, we've known these people forever. He lived to be well into his 90s. He was in his very late 90s when he passed away, the father who went vegan and macrobiotic. But I remember I had little kids, and at the time he was like, "You have to go vegan. When are you going to go vegan?" And I was like, "No, I just can't. I don't want to give up dairy." And he's like, "Just give up dairy. Just keep eating meat for a little bit, but give up dairy." And I did for like 2 years, and it was crazy because I felt so good, but I don't know why I went back. I feel like I went back. I don't know. It was like at all the kids' birthday parties, and I wanted a piece of pizza. That's what it was.
I was just
And
gonna say, from like those social interactions and parties, right? That's almost
yes,
always what did it. Like I remember even being tempted because there was a cookie that looked so good. You know what I mean?
yes.
I knew it had probably condensed milk in it, and it's like those temptations, but there comes a point when you make the association that's broader that you don't want it, right? But
Yes.
I know what you're saying, and then there were not options. There just weren't options for kids
Right.
to grab a vegan pizza or something like that.
Yeah. So it was different, and I was in my 20s, and I didn't go vegan until I was in my mid 40s.
Mm,
But those seeds were planted. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons I want to do this. Of course, about aging well, but planting seeds. Maybe somebody's not ready to go vegan yet, but maybe they're hearing our conversation and it'll resonate later. And so there's always that. So I know you said, you had the big diet culture in your family, and how did your parents? Well, I know you lost your father young, right? Can you
yes.
tell that story? It's
Sure, sure. I was family of 6 girls, and my dad was somewhat of an adventurist, a little bit of a show off too, like in the day I remember he'd, always want the new car on the street, and he did scuba diving and things that were just kind of considered a little more out there. So he also flew planes, and when I was 10, he bought a helicopter. And my there was a lot of tragedy in his side of the family when I was young. I felt like death was always around the corner when I was
mm,
because there was so much of it. I just felt like, when is someone else going to die? In his family, his sister died. Excuse me, she was electrocuted um, as a teenager in the tub.
oh
Um,
my gosh.
his mother died, so my grandmother died, and then his sister lost her husband just a couple of years later from a heart attack. He was 38, so young. And she
Whoa.
had 4 children. And so he kind of stepped in to help out, like a bit of a father role. And so he he took the children up this day, and I was a little mad with him because he didn't take me up that
Oh
day.
my god.
I remember him leaving and me, like, sulking a little bit, like, "Sure, you're gonna take them up and not me," kind of thing. I actually don't even remember being in the helicopter. I remember being in his planes. I've probably blocked it out at some point, but, I used to love going up in his he had floater planes too, and you'd go down on the water and see the water coming up over the windows. It was, like, such an experience, and, so he took the 3 children up that day, and my mother heard that there was a crash, and she knew right away. So they all died. And it was just a few days after my 11th birthday. So it ripped our family apart. My mom always felt guilty for the loss of my aunt's 3 children. She had
Oh my god.
3 that day. My family never really, I feel like we never recovered well from it. We also had some other stuff going on as young girls. We had what you consider we called it a peeping Tom, but it was a voyeur that would go around our house and look in the windows. And
Oh
so
my
I was
gosh.
always very insecure and felt like really I felt scared a lot, really, honestly,
Yeah.
child, and all of that tension and stress of having this go on outside our home, and then all of this trauma inside our home, and we didn't know how to deal with it. No one talked about it. We didn't really, we didn't know what trauma was. That word is so used now.
Yeah.
We just sucked it up and did our best to cope, right? And survive it, basically. And so it was a big I grew up fast. I grew up pretty fast. I think I matured quickly and learned to value things deeply. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
not. So yeah, it was a pivotal, of course, thing in my life and in the trajectory of our family, really.
Yeah. I mean, how do you think it affected you, like, as an adult? Did you ever get to process that, or how does it show up now, or does it? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still in ways processing it, you know what I mean? I've done different things to process it, but there's a part of me that feels so raw when
yeah.
I go there. And even with fall, like this time of year, because it happened in October, I there's a sense of like uneasiness that comes over. And I use that word because I find anxiety is really triggering, the word itself. it's something I've experienced and I do experience. So I like to use the word uneasiness because it's
Mhm.
so loaded. The minute we say the word, it's loaded. Anyhow, so this time of year is like I always feel that sense of like foreboding and I'm learning more about Chinese medicine coincidentally at this time of my life, and how this season is a season of letting go. And people, you often hear people pass this time of year or get ill and die in this season. And it's like there's like that circle of understanding that I have at the same time. It's odd, even though it was a tragedy, it's still, perhaps that was his life's path. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's yeah, it's and at the same time, on a more comedic level, I'm always at my children to close the blinds in their rooms, because in the nighttime, if it's dark outside and their light is on, I'm like, people
Yes.
can see in your window,
That's right. It's
right?
true.
And my older girls are like, "Mom, not everyone has a peeping tom." I'm like,
Peeping Tom. I
anyone can
know.
see in your window. So, we joke about it at that level because that will always be something I'm
Yeah.
conscious of. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
a very raw story. And you mentioned Chinese medicine. Is there a place in our body where we hold grief like that?
Yeah. The
Where
lungs,
is that?
the lungs process
The
grief.
lungs?
The lungs process grief. Yeah. And so if it's interesting because one of my Fascia Flow students, reached out to me in the spring, and she had lost her mother, and she was just kind of coming back to classes, and she was like, "Do you have anything to just offer?" And I was like, "You know what? The lungs process grief, just to let you know. And if you feel like your immune system is low or you've been dealing with things, it's connected. It's
Mhm.
not random." And she was like, "Oh my God, I've had like um, infections and antibiotics, and my lungs, I'm dealing with problems." So the body is just so wide.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. And so for those, let's do a little bit about fashion now since we went there, but it correlates with the Chinese meridians, right?
Mhm.
Can you explain a little bit about fascia flow and the Chinese meridians and all that?
Yeah, I'm going to geek out on you now. So
Yes, I love it.
it's really my second passion. Like, I feel like my first passion came with learning about plant-based, and it was like this big discovery that changed so much in my life. And now this is the second best thing that I've ever learned about, and I want everyone to know about it, just like because it's like, but you must know. But of course, people will know when they're ready, when they're
Yes.
ready to come to it. You can't bring it to them and have them take it. So we begin as fascia, right? When the cells begin, when we're like this little embryo, fascia is the tissue. It is the first fundamental tissue. We cannot separate it. It is everywhere in our bodies. Everything that we are made of is a level of fascia. So that sounds a little out there, but even our bones are hardened fascia, and our bones are not completely hard. They still have some malleability.
Huh.
uh, yeah, yeah, but everything is fascia. Tendons and ligaments are more hardened fascia. One could even say the blood to some degree is fascia because it can coagulate. It can, right? So we begin as fascia and the body forms out of it. And so we begin with these energy channels. We're energy. We know we're energy. We feel each other's energy. We can connect with our energy. So the body begins as this energy, intelligent, organized energy that forms meridians through the fascia, the energetic pathways that form our heart are connected down through our arms. And all of our organs have these energetic pathways that basically flow through the fascia. You can think of it as like a very, very hollow tube of sorts, but it can't even be you can't visualize it. It's just there. This chi intelligent energy flowing through these fascial planes that run through everywhere in the body from head to toe. So the fascia connects the organs, but it also separates the organs. It penetrates the bones and surrounds the bones. It goes into every muscle fiber. And yet we know so little about it, and we don't know how to interface with it, right? Everyone does cardio or strength training or yoga. It's like the
Yeah.
3 biggies, but no one knows how to connect with this tissue that is basically either restricting us or allowing us to move freely, and also sending communication through our body all the time. The energy moves through, and the communication through the fascia. Our proprioception, how we take in things in space, that's our fascial tissue. So it's
Oh,
really such a fundamental part of our being, and we don't know what it is. We're just starting to like learn about it as a culture. And I think we're going to hear a lot about it like in the next 10 years.
yeah.
Lymph flows through the fascia. So everything needs to be healthy, really, and hydrated and pliable and gushy. And what happens through life is it gets restricted and dense. And it happens just because we're aging. We've had traumas. Traumas will energetically, right? When you think
Mm.
when we're like have a trauma, we pull into our bodies and there's a freezing. And so the fascia can actually be restricted through emotional or psychological trauma, but also physical, of course. But just sitting for hours at a desk or on a bus, that will train the fascia. And it's training. The body wants us to stay safe, the body wants to adapt. So if we're sitting for hours and hours and we're typing like this, the body's saying, okay, you need to be in this position. So I'm going to lay down fascia to keep it there. And
Oh.
yeah, not expend so much energy for you to be there. So we're like this. And then we get up and want to do things and we're stiff and we don't know why. Well, we need to start working on the fascia in the back and front of the body and open things up, because we're continually training our fascia. Our fascia is it's like our fingerprint in a sense, right? It shapes, we're our shape through our fascia. So
Is it
yeah.
hereditary to some point, do you think, or do you shape your own fascia?
I feel like when we're conceived,
Uh-huh.
there's so much, of course, that is. I do feel like we come into this world with like um, the training that I did. There's personality types associated with our the fascial work.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, in this system, when you're conceived, you're already a personality type.
Mhm.
That's a bit deeper that I don't talk about a lot with my members because it's like, whoa, out there, right? But we also
Yeah.
know that we do come into this world a certain way. We could have like 10 children and raise them the same way, and we know they're completely different, right?
Yes. This week's guest, the podcast that's out right now while we're recording is Candace Thomas, and she does this thing. It's called yourvitality.com. It's your personality. It's like an Enneagram, except like with your higher self and your lower self. And we just had this whole conversation about your
Hmm.
kids come the way they are. Now that you're older and your kids are grown, you can see they were the way they were from day one.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I look at my oldest daughter and she was scribbling under our tables, coloring and doing artwork when she was like 2. And she went into university to do sciences. And I'm like, she is not in her realm. And now she's pursuing her art. And I'm like,
Wow.
this is your space. Like
Yeah.
I could see it from the beginning,
From
right?
the day they're born. I know, it's
Yeah.
crazy. So certain personalities have different, so does that mean if you're more like type A, do you have tighter fascia?
Um,
Or
so we can be a yang type or a
uh,
yin type. And I think we know if we're yin or yang, right?
can you explain a little for people who don't know what that means?
So yin is everything in energy, and in Chinese medicine you'll hear yin and yang. Yin is the we're in a yin season now. Fall and winter are the yin seasons. It's a declining energy. It's a softer, receptive, feminine, quieter energy. Yang is an uprising energy. It's considered more male, more active. Spring and summer are yang. The energy's rising. Things are growing. There's an abundance. There's color. And now we're kind of declining and coming in. Even stages of life are yin and yang, right? So when we're born, we're very young, and we would say menopause is more of a yin time of life. And we need to recognize that and honor it to some degree, right?
Mhm.
I'm learning a lot about that myself because I'm a very yang type. I'm go, go, go. And I want to do a lot in a day and I like push myself a lot. And so, you can sense that in your own body or your way of life. And what's interesting is being a yang type, I was attracted to doing the yang fascia flow moves because we have 8 in the upper body, 8 in the lower body, 4 yin in the upper, 4 yang, same with lower body, 4 yin, 4 yang. So I love doing these yang stretches because they were just like going after it, you know what I mean? But what I really needed that changed my tissues were the yin
Mhm,
stretches.
exact isn't that
And
funny?
so it's like recognizing that sometimes what you need is not what you're we will gravitate towards who we are and what our constitution is, even though it's not necessarily the best for us. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
even if you know anything about Ayurveda and doshas,
Yes.
you often are going for your own qualities that will throw you out of balance. And when you know that, you can bring in the other qualities. But it's tricky. Why we do that?
I
It's
know.
a mystery, right?
I know. Yeah, we had Victoria Moran on and she talked about that. So,
Yes,
yes,
yes.
we are schooled in all the things, but
We have it all now.
we know everything.
Love it.
Um, okay, so yeah, and I love that, the fascia flow has been so good for me because um I had a frozen shoulder, which I think is common,
Yeah, very.
and it really really helped. And I went to I went to acupuncture and cupping and
Yeah,
all the things, and I feel like the fascia flow really helped me the most.
good.
And thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah,
And
your
so
job. You're doing it though, right? That's the trick is you gotta do it.
but I enjoy it. It's really, I've done yoga for probably 30 years and I
Mhm.
love yoga, but I feel like I also might have injured myself a little bit from yoga, from all the repetitive movements, all the chaturangas and,
Yeah.
the push-up things. And so I feel like this is a good complement to it. I don't know. Did you finish talking about it? You didn't talk about the Chinese meridians.
Oh, yeah. So the meridians, we have yin meridians and yang meridians. And so they're all associated with organs in the body. So when we're working a certain flow, and I tell people we're working the gallbladder meridian now, it runs on the outer line of the leg. It's associated with the IT band. When we're working that tissue, if it's dense, you can think of like when it's dense, energy is not flowing through it. And then when we free it up, the energy can flow again. So
Mm,
not only do we change the tissue on a physical level, because this movement, it's a loaded eccentric contraction. So what that means is you begin with the contracted muscle and then you keep it pulled in or flexed or resisted, and then you lengthen it. So it's resisting the lengthening all the time. And that integrates the fascia, changes it on a cellular level, and cleans it up. But in addition, we improve then that functioning of the energy through the meridian so that we have a more holistic um, flow through the body to all of the organs. So we can improve the health of the gallbladder through the gallbladder meridian flows. So it's really a beautiful system. And I love that it's so holistic. And for me, I also injured myself a lot with yoga. And I think yoga is beautiful and wonderful. I just think you have to be careful in class perhaps
mhm.
with who you're training with or the style of yoga that you're not always overstretching because that's what
Yeah.
we're doing. We're always lengthening the muscle. And I explain to my students, it's like, remember those slinkies that we had?
Yes.
And if you pull them all the time, they didn't go back.
Right.
They lost the recoil. We want our muscles to have that recoil. So if we're always just lengthening them, we create those tears and the muscle starts to lose that flexibility coming back. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I love yoga, and I know you do too. And I know that a lot. Why? This is really a little bit off subject, but just in your opinion, like, why do you think yoga and veganism go so well together? I feel like people who do one, maybe a lot of times do both. Do you have
Yeah.
a theory?
I feel it's the peace that there's a
Yeah.
level of peace to it. Like,
Hmm. Yeah,
oh,
it's like Drina's kind kitchen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like a certain quality of being peaceful with yourself and what you're doing with others. I will say though, in my yoga teacher training, I was the only one that was anywhere close to plant-based. I thought it
Oh,
was so
really?
interesting. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And how long ago did you do your yoga teacher training?
My first one was like 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Well, going back to your the cookbooks, we talked a little bit about the plant-powered families. I
Mm.
think you published that one in 2015, and that was your first oil-free cookbook, right?
Yeah, well, you got it.
Why, for those who don't know a lot about not eating oil, why is oil not healthy? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, the Mediterranean diet or olive oil, that's healthy.
Yeah, it's a hard one to wrap your head around. It truly is because
Hmm.
any doctor, if you go to a naturopath, anyone will, especially in this phase of life, they will recommend you get lots of oils in your diet.
Yep.
And when I talk to my naturopath, and she's like, "And you're putting olive oil all over your meals," and I'm like, "Mm-hmm."
Hmm. Yep. Sure am.
Right now. But I don't restrict healthy fats. I just don't use the added oils. And so, yeah, I mean, I learned from the plant-based doctors, it was kind of like that learning curve of, oh, I've been cooking with oil and thought it was fine. And I was actually I never used a lot because I started from that perspective of a lower fat diet when my father-in-law had his heart attack. So that was kind of like my frame of reference in developing recipes. And some of them got a little more decadent, but I was always considered like the kind of healthy cookbook author, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just kind of learned from the doctors like Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Grigger and the lot. Dr. Campbell is kind of my hero.
Yes.
I just adore him and just started. I never thought it was really possible to make good food, but I actually feel like my food is better now
Mhm.
because it's forced me to be a little more creative,
Yeah.
um, but two, it brings in more textures and components from foods that you weren't using, right?
Yeah.
It just
I
richer.
know. Yeah, and so it's just people need to understand that it's just like artery clogging, high calorie food that it's processed that you don't need because like you have like this delicious house dressing and it has tahini in it for fat. It's so good. The creamy house dressing and
Oh, that one was a popular one for a number of years. I'm glad you liked that one. You know what? I think tahini's underused and pumpkin seeds. I'm using
pumpkin
pumpkin
seeds.
seeds so much now. They're high in protein, they've got zinc, they're just so nutrient dense. They're cheaper than like cashews and other nuts. And I'm using them right now because one of my girls has a bit of a food sensitivity. So a lot of nuts showed up for her. And I'm like, okay, we'll just go to pumpkin seeds because I love them and I know what to do with them, right? But I use them in pestos and sauces and desserts and all kinds of things. Just puree them. I did my spinach artichoke dip with them recently, which I normally use cashews and I just subbed in pumpkin seeds and it was perfect.
Yum.
So yeah, I agree that I think it's like I consider it like when you think of removing things from foods and utilizing them, that is what we're doing from with oils, right? It's really just taking it out and refining it. So people say don't eat refined sugar. Well, it's kind of the same thing with oil. You're pulling it out instead
Yeah.
of using the nut or the
Yeah.
walnut butter or the uh, avocado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think maybe your most famous recipe is your chocolate sweet potato cake.
I
That
would
thing
have to agree with that.
yes. That thing, I have made this numerous times for people and they're like, "This is so good. What's in it?" And I'm like, "Well, let me tell you." Um,
I love
so
that you love it.
it's so good. Like, can you tell people a little bit about what's in that?
Yeah, well, my goal was to make this chocolate delicious, decadent cake that was made with primarily sweet potatoes. And I used sweet potatoes in the frosting and in the cake, and then I used like nut butter in the frosting. And that gives it that body and creaminess. And so, for people who want to go like really low fat, the thing is you lose a bit of that like luxuriousness and that mouth
Well,
feel with the frosting. But of course,
you
could have.
can I've used whatchamacallit, like peanut butter powder and just
Hmm,
reconstituted that and used it, and it's low
nice.
fat, and it still comes out
Good.
phenomenal.
Nice. Good to
So,
know.
good sub.
Nice. I love that. Yeah.
And so what sorry, I interrupted you. What else is in that?
It's okay, it's okay, it's all good. No, I get that question all the time, like, "Can I reduce the nuts?" And I totally understand why, because I know from my, again, my father-in-law's experience, sometimes you just need to have a lower fat when reversal is the need,
Yes,
when you're at that stage. But yeah, it's really, it's become so popular, and it's like, mm, the recipe that I'm known for now, I think.
I think so.
Everybody
And
says
sweet potato, like people are like, there's sweet potatoes in this cake. That's bananas. That's crazy. And it's so good. And also, I've adapted I think it was you. Yeah, I adapted one of your Ninja Creamy recipe. You have Ninja Creamy recipe, right?
sweet
Because
potato vanilla ice cream with whipped
yes, because
cream.
I've made a chocolate peanut butter cup one, and I used, and it says in the recipe, credit to Dreena Burton, because I got the idea of using a sweet potato, like a Hannah yam,
Yeah.
as the base, and so it makes it so creamy. It doesn't have nuts in it, and at the end, so I make it chocolate with the cacao and everything. And a Ninja Creamy, if you guys don't know what it is, it's like an ice cream maker by Ninja. I guess they make the Ninja, what is it? The Bullet? No, they make some kitchen stuff.
Yeah, I think the Creamy is their most popular machine.
Yeah.
I think it launched Ninja into the
Oh, is that right?
yeah, yeah.
So it's a kitchen appliance and it makes ice cream out of, like I said, I'm making it out of a white sweet potato and I put in cacao and, chocolate plant milk and all the things. And then it has this, uh, you mix the ice cream and it has this crazy blade on it. It really, like, you freeze it overnight and then it has this wild blade in there, like you wouldn't want to get near it.
I back
And
out of the kitchen when I put mine on. I literally back out of the kitchen. I don't trust that it's not gonna spin off and come out and smack me. I'm like, "No, no, I don't trust it."
you know what? It does look like a ninja throwing star or whatever. Maybe that's where the name came from. I don't know. But um, then it has this thing on it where you could put mix-ins in, like, if you ever went to Cold Stone Creamery, how they'd mix in like jelly, whatever,
Mhm.
Oreos or whatever you wanna put in it.
Eggs
So
or
I put a bit of the peanut butter powder in and it mixes it in, and it's like a chocolate peanut butter cup ice cream. It's so
yummy.
good. But anyway, I got that idea with the white sweet potato from you too.
Sweet potatoes
Um,
are magic,
well,
basically. They're magic, I think.
they
Yeah,
really are.
I love
Yeah.
it. One of my very I'm always batch cooking sweet potatoes,
Yeah.
always, because then I have them in the fridge and I work them into pasta sauces or soups or salad dressings or muffins or, pudding, like anything. They can
Yeah.
just do anything.
Yeah. Well, so let's move on a little bit. So how old are you, Drina?
Okay, I will be 54 in October. I'm 53 now. I had to remember for a moment. When you asked me at the start, "Can we talk?" I'm like, "I have to remember how old
I
I am."
don't know how old I am, but that's good because you don't want to focus on it. So have you gone through menopause yet?
Yes, yeah, I've gone through perimenopause, which I thought I was just having a nervous breakdown and
Oh,
didn't know.
really?
Yeah, I didn't realize it was perimenopause. We're I'm noticing in the last 2 years, there's a lot more menopause information coming out and perimenopause and podcasts and schooling women, which is so important, but also so delayed. Like, women know
Yeah.
more about getting their periods than this stage of life that can go on for well over a decade for some
S-
women. Yeah.
Okay, but you've finished having your period, no
Oh,
more.
yes, yeah, I'm menopausal now.
You're
Mhm,
menopause. So
mhm.
what do you mean, like you thought you were having a nervous breakdown? You just like tell
Oh,
us what
yeah.
happened and what you did finally, or have you overcome it? Or
Yeah, I mean, it was, I will say also it was, probably complicated or exacerbated really by the fact that I was also a stressed out mom with 3 young kids, and we have never had, like, family support, so it's always just been myself and my husband doing everything, right? And
yeah.
it can be a lot, and there comes a stage with kids where you're just driving them around and you're
Yes.
going activity to activity and you're trying to keep up with the house and you're trying to do your own work and then there's all these phases that they're going through. So I was in my like it was right around the time of Planned Parenthood Families came out, actually, and I just remember feeling drained, like wasted, like my body was hurting, my joints were hurting, which was partly the fascia work, but also it was just worse at that time, I think, because of the hormonal shifts, and a great deal of anxiety. Not sleeping. I went through so many, many years of not sleeping
Mm.
well, and think I have a little PTSD about it as well from that time because it was almost a decade of just not sleeping well. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And it was I know now because since once, and this was before hot flashes came. So all of this starts early and you don't think it's perimenopause because it's not what you know to be those symptoms, which we mostly know of as hot flashes, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and you just think it's you. So I internalized it as me, like I'm failing, right?
Right.
Like I don't know how to cope. What's wrong with me? And instead, I was going through these hormonal shifts. If I had had perhaps blood work done, had known at the time and met with my naturopath, but instead I just kind of took it in as me, which made it worse, of
Of
course.
course.
Yeah. And then later the hot flashes came. It wasn't until like 48, 49 that I started to notice hot flashes. Then I went to my naturopath and she was like, "Oh, yeah, you've probably been in perimenopause for a number of years now." And I was like, "Oh, darn." I
Well,
could have had more help then?
oh, man. And
Mhm.
so, well, I know you've worked with Dr. Barnard, and so we've had him on, and he talked about a half a cup of mature soybeans a day for hot flashes. Did you ever try that?
I mean, I always ate soy. I probably didn't measure it out, or maybe I didn't have enough.
Were you
Uh,
having soybeans or other forms?
Other forms, not
Okay.
soybeans, and that might be why. It might have
Yeah,
been just tofu.
he said it has to be soybeans. He said to have the other things too,
Hmm.
but it's the mature soybeans, organic, that will work on the hot flashes.
What do you
So
mean by mature soybeans? Like not edamame?
not edamame, just soybeans. And he in his study he used, I think they were called Laura brand or Lara brand. So I'm just saying that again in case people did not hear that episode.
I
Um,
So that's new to me. I always just heard it was soy as a
mhm.
umbrella. I would imagine then it's like dried soybeans that you cook yourself?
I think so, or probably you could even get them in a can. But he said it could be like, you know how you roast your chickpeas with spices and make them like, croutons or just crunchy things that you can eat like a snack. He said you could also do that with the soybeans, but half a cup, it's not much. You could have a half a cup of
Oh,
soybeans,
see.
no problem.
Do
Easy.
work them into a dip or anything. Yeah,
Totally.
interesting.
Yeah.
Mm.
So then what happened? You went through menopause and you figured it out, and what kind of help did you get or what made you feel better? That's I think what we want to
Yeah, yeah,
know.
for sure. So I with my naturopath, she started me on some supplements, and that certainly helped.
Like what kind?
There were oh gosh, I can't remember the names on the ones I was taking at the time. There was this, powder that helped with the actual hot flashes, and I can't remember what it was called, but I
That's
did also
okay.
start, hormone replacement.
You did.
Yeah, I did, and so I like to be open about that because I
Of
think it's
course.
very personal choice and people are very nervous about it, but I think there's a lot of evidence now showing that it's beneficial, and then she explained how um, it's really showing to be very beneficial for the bones long term for women. But of course, there's a window that you have to start.
Yes.
So, some women who didn't get this information and haven't had their period for, I think it might be, I'm not sure if it's 5 years. I don't know the window.
It's like 5 or 10 years.
Yeah,
You have to start the hormone therapy close to when you
exactly.
cease having your period.
Mhm.
Do you mind if you would share what kind? Is it like a transdermal? Is it compounded? Where do you put it?
Yeah,
Pill?
so I take a progesterone at night, and that's just a little pill that you take. And then I was doing an estrogen compound that you would just put behind the knee. But she tested my blood. So I think I was doing that for a year and a half. And then we did a blood test, and she noticed the saturation wasn't enough for me. And she said, some women will absorb it differently. And it's also based on your body type and all of these things. So now I'm not doing a compounded, I'm doing just the estrogel, I think it's called.
Okay.
And it's a wider application. So with this one, you pump it and you literally have to massage it to your inner thighs for like a long time until it's so dry and absorbed. And then it's a deeper saturation than the compounded form. And I think as well with the compounding, it can be sometimes not as precise as the one that's standardized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's we had Dr. Deborah Shapiro on. It hasn't aired yet, and she was talking about that. And you know, there's some good compounding pharmacies and they have good measurements, and so I don't want to say anything bad about that because I think a lot of people do get help from compounded hormones. But yes, but you have to keep, so what do you keep getting your blood tested and then it tells you if you're getting what you need to get?
It's also how you're coping and your symptoms too, like if you're noticing, because she's just asking me, how you feeling? And I was like, I sometimes still feel a little off. I can't really describe it. And we do blood work every year anyhow. So that's something that with, your doctor at the stage of life, they kind of want to, oops, sorry, my
That's
watch
okay.
was talking. They want to cover off everything, make sure that things are looking good. And so she also checks all the other things, iron and vitamin D and B and all those uh, parts of your health and blood work. So, yeah, I think for me, routinely, we'll probably check every year or every second year to see if the absorption and the saturation is there.
And you're feeling better?
Yeah, yeah, I will say it did definitely shift things for
Oh,
me.
that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And like
good.
life is so important, right? And it's like, I think about longevity, and I always joke with my friends who, like, we say, gosh, our grandparents did the worst things in life and they lived until their 80s. But I think, what was their quality of life though?
Yeah.
It had to be pretty poor at that point.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think so. And I think I'm just so grateful that you're sharing this because, we need people to tell us their experiences and so that we can make decisions, but, just hear other people's stories because otherwise, how are you supposed to know? And then you feel alone. And um, yeah. So,
Yeah, I think as women, we can feel a lot of shame about
yes.
making these decisions, and we shouldn't. We
No.
should just own that we need to do what's feeling right to us, to
Yes.
with the proper information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you love most about being 53, almost 54?
Ah, honestly, I love it. Gives you like a little extra attitude.
Yes. Yes.
Not in a jerk way, like, not like you're being rude to people or anything, but just, like, own yourself more, and you're not apologizing for who you are. You're just like, I'm me, and, and I love these aspects of me now, and there's parts of me that I wanted to, like, push away now, but now I know that they also make me be, very visionary about things or be creative, and that, I give a lot, and that's part of all of that aspect of the negative things that are, or the things I used to think were negative, that it also brought those things into my life, so it's like you own more of who you are.
Yeah. I can't imagine. What did you think was negative about yourself? I can't even begin to
I mean,
imagine that.
we all are so hard on ourselves too, though, like women, I think we're just so overly critical of ourselves. Like if things aren't going right, like I said, when I was having that hard time in my 40s, I just took it as me. Like I'm not
Yeah.
coping, right? And when I have this uneasiness that we could call anxiety, I know that okay, that also is part of what makes me be very like creative in my thoughts and bring
Mhm.
new things to life. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
me dig deeper at times. So there's just more of a wholeness. And
Yes.
yeah.
I we are so hard on ourselves, and that's what That is one thing I love about this phase of life. I just turned 56 and I
Yeah.
feel like I've really softened on myself, like a lot of self-compassion. I'm kind of
Yeah,
like saying this stage of life is a softening. You're
it
softening everywhere. Maybe I mean physically, mentally. It's
is.
but it's so nice. Like it's just like, everything will be fine and it's all good, you know? You just don't wanna stress as much, you just wanna kind of enjoy this phase of life, and I
Yeah.
don't know, I'm done being
It's
hard on myself.
yeah,
Not that I ever was, like, so hard on myself, but I'm definitely less hard.
yeah, no, it and I feel like it correlates to that yin phase of life. It's when you're
Yes.
starting to reflect more and go more inward and soften around the edges, like you say, right?
Yeah.
And
I
also
love it.
really prioritize yourself more. Like I'm
Yeah.
very much because you sacrifice so much. I think if you have children, you sacrifice so much for them during a long phase of your life, and you really have to,
Mhm.
that this is like a reclaiming time.
Yes.
That's what I'm really noticing. It's like reclaiming things I want to do, reclaiming my time, and I'm still there for my kids. I still do a lot for my kids. They know it. I tell them all the time I'm an angel. They're like, "Oh, you got this for me, mom?" I'm like, "Yes, because my halo is shining bright today. I'm your angel. I am an angel in this house." So, but at the same time, I'm going out and I'm doing tennis lessons again and, like,
Oh.
doing things for myself that I wanna do, and I think there's that shift of, I'm getting my time back now,
Mhm.
right? Taking
Yes.
things back.
I know. It's, we I definitely feel that, and I love that. My oldest daughter is 31, she's been married for 6 years, and my husband's like, "When is she gonna have kids?" And I'm like, "She lives down the street." I'm like,
Aw,
"Shush, because, that's gonna be like half our kid. So just be quiet and let me have some time to myself finally."
you're so right about that.
Yeah.
You're so right about that. If family is close, you're going to
Yes.
depend on them.
And
Yes.
of course, I'll love it, but I'm really loving this. So let me enjoy this part first. Um, so what is your best do you have a best piece of advice for aging well?
I think it goes back to just owning who you are and just really being true to yourself. True to yourself. There's one you, and when you start to know yourself more, which I think you really do in this phase, just being true to that.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. Do you just have one best piece of advice in general? Doesn't have to be age related.
Um, keep moving, keep moving. I look at my extended family, and there's a fascia expert who says if you don't move, you stick. And it's true. You have to keep moving, but he also explained it's moving in different ways too, because the more we move in the same patterns, like walking is great, but if we're only walking, then the body's adapting to only walking. So finding new ways to move and trying new things so that the tissues can respond in new ways. And that also is good for the brain too.
Mm. Oh, that's true.
Mm.
Your mom's still alive?
She is, and she's not in the best of, I mean, she's got an amazing outlook. Like her perspective is amazing and she makes us laugh and she's always there to chat. We FaceTime her every day. But she's not mobile. She has a hard time moving around and
Yeah.
she needs help every day, someone coming in to help with meals and that kind of thing. So,
Yes.
I think that that's harsh. It's harsh to not have that independence in later in life, and I just want to age well and in a sense die well. Like that doesn't sound like the worst or the
Yes.
nicest way of saying it, but pass in a way that you're still living life on your terms as much as
Yeah.
you can. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of my mom's exactly the same.
Mm.
She's really not can't get around, and 81 years old and, has to be wheeled down to meals and same thing. And so I think you and I both took that lesson away from like, okay, well, we're going to do our yoga and our fascia and our weights and and
Mhm.
eat well so we don't end up like that.
Yeah.
Um, do you have a favorite health or beauty product?
Oh, right now I am loving, loving chaga tea.
Oh, yeah.
So good for the immune system. And I get the nuggets from a local company. And the thing I love about them is that so you can buy chaga tea in stores like tea bags, of course, right? But you use them once and then the next day you use a new tea bag. So you can actually buy the chaga nuggets. They're mushrooms, but when you buy them, they look like rocks and you steep them in you just boil water and steep them and it draws out the properties of the chaga, which is really good for the immune system and all kinds of other things for the body. I drink that every day. And last year, I will say my family were a bunch of little viral nomads running through my house with one would come back from university with a cold, the other would come back from school with something. I fended off so much, and I really attribute it to my fascia work and my thymus, because thymus is associated with the internal immune system, and drinking my chaga tea. I know
Yes.
for me.
Yes, and there's one of the fascia exercises that we do when you have your. I think it's the one where you put your forearms on the floor and you curl up like a cat. Your palms are up, and then you're kind of shoving your face over your hands,
You
and
got it, the punching.
yeah,
Thymus
yeah,
punches. Mhm.
and you say this stokes your thymus, and then you always say, "Are you hot yet?" And I'm like, "Yes." It really heats you up, and so that is another good one for yeah, I love that one. So if you're not feeling yourself, you can do that one. I love that.
Yeah, I do
Um,
a lot. I would do there's another version where you're rolling down from the wall. You kinda get your feet up on the wall and you push up and you roll down. And I would do that several times through the day. And when I started to feel in fact, there were a couple of times I felt, when you can feel like a little something is
yeah,
and
coming
you're like,
on.
"Oh, it's gonna full blown come out." But I fought it off like a couple of times. So I feel like that's the work.
That's good.
Mm.
Um, which public person do you admire for the way they're aging?
Oh, I adore Dr. Campbell, and I just love his he's so wise and brilliant, and yet also there's like this sincerity and softness about him. I really, really like him, and admire him, but also that Anne Esselstyn is something else. Like, it's hard not to pick people in the plant-based world
Yes.
because they're really doing it well, and she's so dynamite, right? She's like a little dynamo, so I gotta mention her. Yeah, wow.
Yes. Oh my god, I love her so much. Um, do you have a favorite concert you've ever been to? I mean, going all the way back up till now. Favorite concert?
Gosh, you know what? I I remember this concert, this is gonna make you laugh, back when I was, like, a teenager, it was Platinum Blonde.
Platinum Blonde? I don't even know who that is.
They were like the Duran Duran spinoff, right?
Oh
They're
my
like and there was 3, like, hyper blonde boys, and they came to Newfoundland, and I was in that stage. It wasn't my favorite concert, but it's just the one that really I remember because we were all, like, screaming teenage girls, and then we saw them after going into the Hotel Newfoundland, and we were, like, jumping out of the car to go try to see them,
Oh
Um,
god.
but we saw Tori Amos locally a few years back, and she was phenomenal. She had 2 pianos, and she was, like, one on each side, just
Oh
playing.
my god.
Yeah, she was phenomenal. Mhm.
She is phenomenal. I love her. She's
Cool.
really good.
Yeah.
Oh, well, is there anything else? I feel like we covered a lot. Uh,
We
anything you want to
chatted
leave us with?
no, I was just a real joy to be with you, and I just hope women or anyone listening, they feel empowered to explore their choices, and grow in this phase of life and not feel closed off in this phase of life.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right. Thanks, Dreena. Take care.
Lauren, bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thanks for listening, friend. From my heart to yours, be well until we meet again.